So for step 27, the rear axle housing. Well, now it's time to do what we did with the front one, where we're going to put in the joint shaft, put in the other bevel gear that's going to spin around on that large differential gear, and then close everything up. The only thing, once again, is to make sure that you get these nuts in there, because they're going to be used to install the ball connectors for the suspension arms in a later step. So you don't want to miss those, and you also want to make sure that they go in correctly so that they're actually sitting properly. And by the looks of it, you want the point down, very similar to what we did in the other one. So here are the tapping screws, again, our nuts, the E-clip, and the bearings that we need, and of course our bevel gear and our joint shaft. So I'll set this up and we'll put this together. So the first thing we're going to do is work on the joint shaft, and then we'll install everything and close it all up. So let's grab our joint shaft, and you can see that we need to put on an E-clip. So let's do that right off the bat. And grab our E-clip here, and we're going to put that onto there just like that. And I'll grab our tweezers, or pliers I should say, push that on. So now that is nicely in place. That's solid. So now we've got to put on our bevel gear, and you can see that they want a little bit of grease, which is fine. I'm going to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide this on. You can see how that sits all the way to the end, and then it showed a little bit of grease. And again, don't really need to do this here because I'm using the ball bearings, but I did it for the front, so we're going to do it here. And you can see that it only is half on. That's okay, that's the way it's supposed to be. And then the same thing again on the other side, which you can see where the bearing is going to sit. It's going to sit just on the other side of right about there. So I will put a little bit of grease down there. Not a lot, because we're going to slide that bearing onto there. Let it spin. So you can see that ultimately that is how it's going to look and what you're going to end up with. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our axle housing from before, and you can see that the little bearing is going to fit right there on the other side, and then the bigger bearing is going to sit there. So you can see how this is going to spin now. Now, because we greased the differential earlier, it's actually putting the grease onto that bevel gear as well. So I'm not going to put any more on there. That's looks fine to me. So that's great. So that part is done. So now that we have this gear in place, the last thing we have to do is put in these nuts. And as you can see, the corner should be facing down, which I'm going to try and do actually with this. So I'm going to grab tweezers this time, try it this way. And I want to make sure that we get this in here just like that. So we've got that one in place. And we've got that one in place, just like that. You can see how that's going to be. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we'll take this one, right, just like that. And same thing with the last one. We're going to sit that just like that. So you can see that the corners are facing up on both sides. So now we can grab the other half of the axle housing, and everything is sitting in there correctly. So now it's a matter of screwing it in. So let's grab the long one first, because again, if we grab the long one first, we know that we don't have to worry about the size on the other ones. We'll get the one that's different out of the way first. So with this one being the longest, which will end up fitting in this back hole, let's just screw this in and get it started. Now, I'm not screwing this all the way because I want to make sure that the other ones are all going in without binding first. So we can see that we need 2 at the front. So let's put those 2 in. We'll screw them in a bit. So there's 3. Then we've got 2 more on this side. So they're going to be right at the ends. Another one on that end. And then on this side, same again. We've got 2 more screws that have to go into the ends. So essentially there are all of our screws in place. Now I'm gonna just tighten them up now off camera just to make the video a little quicker, but you get the idea. Just make sure that when you're going through, just make sure that they're not binding, make sure they're all going in okay, and then just tighten them down. So I'll come back in a second. So there is the finished axle housing. And what's different with this side, if you remember with the front axle housing, I was saying that it was weird that everything sort of would come out of the axle housing very easily. Well, being that this one is the rear of the car, the rear axle is how I'm familiar with them, where everything is just nicely attached and solid. Nothing can come out of the housing. But I guess with the other one having the steering hub as well, it needed to have more movement. So this is cool. There is our rear axle complete. So 27 is finished. So now we're going to move on to step 28 and attach the axle housing pivots for the rear.